Hey, what's going on you guys? It's Epic here and welcome back to another honest review. Today we're taking a look at Gotham Knights, which just released. Before we get even somewhat deep into this review, I want to let you guys know that my keys were provided by Warner Brothers. If that in any way bothers you, feel free to click off the video, but I can assure you it will not affect my opinion on this game. I also want to be very clear before we bring up any issues with this game that I was not told ahead of time that there would be a day one patch, so if there is one or if there has been one by the time you're seeing this video, just know that I was not told about this and thus my review is going solely off of the key that was provided. If I was aware that there would be a day one patch or that it would fix any issues I'm going to talk about, then obviously I wouldn't bring those up in this review, but I was not told that and as such we'll review the game as is. For my review I played on PC and I'll show you my specs in a second here because this brings me to my first complaint with Gotham Knights. It is one of the most poorly optimized games I have played since Cyberpunk 2077, and that is not an exaggeration. I played Cyberpunk 2077 at launch on PC, and aside from all the bugs, it performed similarly to my experience with Gotham Knights. I cannot stress this enough. Gotham Knights runs terrible. Here are my specs, this is what I'm running. It is by no means a superhuman PC, but it is a very, very high-end rig. And here are the recommended specs on the Steam page. I played on low at 1440p and I could not even maintain 60 FPS. This was made a little better though by AMD's FSR 2.0, which did help me maintain 60 in some areas, but as you can see by the gameplay here, I am dropping frames heavily in the city while I'm riding on the Batcycle. And this is the story that you'll be told a lot in Gotham Knights, at least on PC in my experience, and on console where the frames are capped to 30 FPS. We'll talk about that drama later. But I do want to talk about the optimization here because I remember a while back when Gotham Knights got delayed, a lot of people theorized that it got delayed because the game just wasn't optimized properly. All of the gameplay people had seen seemed very somewhat complete, so no one really assumed that the game wasn't ready per se in terms of the story being done or the gameplay being done and finalized. It was more so that they thought the game was not fully optimized, and I did not buy into those rumors. Well boy, how wrong I was, because it definitely appears from my experience that Gotham Knights got delayed purely because this game runs like I am playing on a microwave. It is terrible. It was really, really hard to become immersed in the environment and become just overall intrigued by the game when the game itself barely runs fully functional at the best of times. And if there isn't frame drops, then there's bugs. I'm talking about cars going 1,000 miles an hour, cars popping out of literal thin air, cars driving through buildings. It is a very, very monotonous experience when you're seeing the same issues over and over and over and over again. Something I also want to address as well before I hear it in the comments is why didn't you go down to 1080p if you couldn't run it at 1440? Well, I did. I did go down to 1080p, and surprisingly, something that I've never actually seen before in a game, it ran worse at 1080p. I saw around 5 to 10 frames dropping when I went down to 1080, and the game actually ran better at the higher resolution, which to me makes absolutely no sense. And I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about the performance issues here, but I really want to, because when I went into Gotham Knights on PC, after hearing that consoles like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X would be capped to 30 frames maximum, I actually thought the reason for this was because consoles would have ray tracing and no option to turn it off. So when I went into PC, I instantly assumed that I'd be able to turn off ray tracing and fly through frame rate, getting upwards of 100. But that is just not the case whatsoever. While you can turn off ray tracing and a bunch of other options which I'll actually commend the game for, the game still just does not run well. It runs terrible, and it's really upsetting to see and sheds a lot of light onto perhaps why this game got delayed. Now, what I'm not going to do is sit here and pretend like it's easy to optimize a game like Gotham Knights, like it's easy to optimize any game, period. But what I will do is sit here and shame the people responsible for letting the game release in this state. This game is absolutely laughable in its current state, and the fact that I've seen defenses to consoles being capped at 30 frames on current gen, because by the way this is the only platform this game is releasing on, is PC and current gen hardware. The fact that there has been comments like, hey, game dev isn't easy. It's not as easy as just getting more frames. It's absolutely ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as the fact that the 30 frames cap was revealed about a week before launch. By no means are the majority of players saying that game dev is easy, nor are they saying that it would be easy to optimize this for 60 frames on console. But what people are saying is that in this era of gaming, on stuff like the PlayStation 5, on stuff like the Xbox Series X, and in my experience on Steam, releasing a game in this state is absolutely inexcusable and downright disrespectful to consumers everywhere. You guys know that I will defend developers on a lot of their choices through various games, but what I will not defend is people absolutely downplaying the severity of a situation like the Gotham Knights frame rate. But I don't want to rant on about that anymore. I just had to get that off my system because it is the main thing that stood out to me when I was playing. Now let's get into the rest of the game, from gameplay to story. Where do we start? I think first of all, what I want to say right off the bat is what I did play of the story was very enjoyable. Now, I don't think the story is on the level of enjoyment as Arkham Knight or Arkham City, but I will say that what I did play of it, I enjoyed. Now, the only reason that I say what I did play of it is because due to the performance issues I experienced, I was unable to confidently complete the game and provide a fair assessment of it after the fact. So I made the decision to stop playing halfway through, as I felt that the performance was negatively impacting my experience. But I did get pretty far through the game, and I will say again, I did find the story to be pretty damn enjoyable. The cutscenes are damn right beautiful, even though they are sadly capped at 60 frames per second, and I do want to commend these cutscenes specifically because most of them are quite emotional, and they do make you quite emotional as well. I found the voice actors doing a really good job, although I was pretty annoyed at how they built up Robin in this game. Now, Robin has always been known as the nerdy sidekick to Batman, but in this game, they make Robin out to be an absolute pussy, and it really angers me. Not because that's not Robin's character, but because I was hoping they would take a different approach in building him up in Gotham Knights and making him seem like he has evolved over the years. But unfortunately, that's just not the case at all. There's some minor spoilers here. I've tried to keep this video pretty spoiler friendly, but there are going to be some minor spoilers here, so feel free to skip ahead a few seconds if you want to avoid this. For what it's worth, it's not that heavy, but there are various cutscenes in which the group are just absolutely ridiculing Robin for little things like doing the wet willy, sticking their finger in his ear, just shrugging him off, and it really makes him seem like he's not important at all, and I found that to be particularly disappointing. And finally, speaking of performances, there is one more thing that I want to talk about in my experience, and it's a small one. I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to care about this, but it did slightly bother me, and that's the voice actors. In Gotham Knights, there are so many characters who I am presuming have totally different voice actors because they sound nothing like their Arkham counterparts. And while I am aware that this is a Gotham Knights game and it's not supposed to be an entry into the Arkham franchise, it is extremely confusing when at the start of the game there is a cutscene that plays and one of the voice actors is from Arkham Knight and one of the voice actors is from Gotham Knights, and they do this simultaneously in the cutscene like it's nothing, but it is so incredibly noticeable. I've kept that really spoiler free there. I'm not going to go into what it is, but oh my god, the opening to this game has some of the worst decision making I have ever seen in terms of voice actors, because they do it so nonchalantly, but it is so obvious that the voice actors are changing, and it really makes me cringe. Now, taking a little step away from the story here, I want to talk about the overall gameplay. How does the game feel in general? Now, in my opinion, Arkham Knight feels a lot smoother than Gotham Knights, not only in its movement but also in its combat. I will say, however, the new additions to Gotham Knight, like the RPG elements such as crafting your own armor, going and finding loot, is actually done pretty well. Do I think it's a feature that needed to be introduced to the Batman franchise? No, I don't. I actually don't think it needs to be there at all, but it is there, and it's implemented in a way which doesn't feel too invasive. It actually feels quite natural to be crafting all of this stuff, so I don't hate it too much at all. But in terms of fighting or just navigating the city with your grappling and whatnot, it doesn't feel as good as it did in Arkham Knight, which is extremely worrying considering that game came out in 2015. Now, as for things such as vehicle controls, I actually found them to be pretty enjoyable. I was quite concerned for them because I had seen gameplay of the vehicles and they didn't look very nice at all. They actually looked kind of clunky, but they are not. They actually feel pretty damn smooth. So all in all, I don't think the gameplay is by any means an upgrade of 2015's Arkham Knight, which is really sad to say, honestly. gameplay, but I also don't think the game is unplayable due to it. I just think it's gonna feel a little different to a lot of people, and you're either gonna love it or hate it. Unfortunately, I fall into the latter, but again, I don't think the game's unplayable, and I definitely don't think the change in the combat style or the movement style affects the game drastically. One thing that I would like to add about my time with the story though that I did not enjoy was the usage of the scanner. The scanner has been in the Arkham games before, and it's used for crime scene detection, and in this game you are a big time detective, but my problem with the scanner is that it is used 24/7. If you did not like the vehicle sections of Arkham Knight because of how tedious that got, you are not going to like the scanner sections, because every 2 seconds the game is asking you to scan something, and it is outrageously annoying. It would be really nice to enjoy a mission without having the game tell me that I need to scan something to find a secret passage or find where to go next. It's just something that they do constantly, and it gets really tiring really fast, and it doesn't seem like they're letting up on it anytime soon. But again, I haven't beaten the game, so I don't know if this slows down, but in the first 10 hours or so of the story, it definitely seemed to be really repetitive. I also briefly just want to take a few minutes to talk about the city itself, because that is something that the devs talked about a lot leading up to the launch of the game. The city in Gotham Knights looks pretty acceptable. There's not too much more to say about it. It is just acceptable. It is okay to look at, though a few issues I did have with the city were how alive it felt, or in this case how dead it felt. Here's gameplay of me with the population settings set to high. This controls how dense the crowds should be in the city presumably, and as you can see, there's not too much going on here. It feels pretty lifeless. It's almost like you're watching the rock bottom episode of SpongeBob, and there's not too much going on here. And when you do find NPCs walking around and filling streets, unfortunately, at least in my experience, a lot of them are the same NPC. For example, in this gameplay here, you see that I find a guy in a raincoat with an umbrella and glasses on, and then I find another one, and another one, and another one, and I'll speed the footage up here, and another one, and another one, and they just kept coming. Now, I am by no means a feature snob when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm there for the combat and the mission, so I don't really care too much about this. Now, again, I would like to talk a lot more about what happens near the end of the game, but I just did not get there in my playtime. The reason why is because I do not feel that it is right to go to the end of this game with the performance issues constantly marring my experience. It just does not feel right to me, and hopefully you guys can understand that as well. But if you're angry, I totally get it. Trust me, I'm not too thrilled about it myself. I think if a patch does get delivered to fix these issues to frame rate, and I'm sure there will be, I will go back and complete Gotham Knights at a later date. I might even stream it, and when I'm done with the game, I'll obviously follow up on my Twitter to give my final thoughts on the game. But from what I played, I will tell you that I am eager to jump back in when these issues do get fixed, because for the most part, this game is really enjoyable. I thought stuff like the skill trees, the introduction of momentum abilities, and more was actually really fun, and they didn't intrude again too much on the gameplay that you've come to know and love from the Arkham series, so I think a lot of you are going to be really happy there. And one more thing that I do want to talk about before ending off the review is the co-op experience, which has also been heavily advertised for Gotham Knights, and I will say that for the most part, the advertising is correct. This is a pretty seamless co-op experience that didn't give me too many issues. Both myself and my buddy who I played with reported that there was no lag at all in co-op, which is really weird considering most games we play do give us issues with ping because we are across the pond from each other. But in the case of Gotham Knights, the experience was pretty pleasant all around. We only actually encountered issues when we would disband our group and try to join back, in which our games would crash time after time again until we closed our lobbies and joined back up. But the scaling felt nice. The game overall flowed really well in co-op, so yeah, I am pretty happy with the co-op experience, so good job there, devs. You did really good with this, and I'm shocked that there is no lag in co-op, at least with my experience. And again, just a closing note on my review here, I am eager to jump back into Gotham Knights and play it, because while the gameplay isn't revolutionary by any means, I did actually enjoy my time with it when the game ran well. But in this current state, I just can't recommend it until these glaring issues are fixed. But with that being said, that's going to do it for my review on Gotham Knights. Again, if you do want to pick this up, it's available on the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X and S, and also Steam, and I believe the Epic Store too. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Give me your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. Hopefully I did a good job, and until the next one, have a good day.